a slightly different type of piece here from a different type of artist as well. This is by Zumi, who's one of the scene's female artists. And Zumi's kind of a different generation. So Jazz, Eva, Martin, Poeta, they're almost like the first generation of graffiti writers. They started off in the late 90s, they were painting graffiti, and that's how their career started. Zumi started around 2003. What really kind of changed the urban art scene here was the 2001 economic crisis, where Argentina went from being, I don't know, for some people they had this brief period of prosperity where they had enough money to fly abroad, buy things, live this kind of very comfortable upper middle class lifestyle, to having nothing, to losing their businesses, to losing all their savings, to basically losing. And the crash had a lot of wide-reaching consequences, but one of the strangest things that happened was the artistic response to the crash. Like the first thing was that stencil art just flourished throughout the entire city, partly because stencils here has always had this association with political propaganda. Now stencils are thought of as quite trendy street art technique used by Shepard Fairey and by Banksy and by all the other celebrity street artists. But here at least the stencil was just a practical tool to avoid having to print things out which cost money. So if you wanted to promote your political candidate, you spray painted this space, or you painted this space using a stencil on a wall. If you're an activist group, you put your message on a wall using a stencil because it was practical and it was cheap and you could do a whole city without having to spend much money. So stencils flourished after the crash because it was a very practical and easy way of just getting a message out. People after the crash were understandably furious. So having had their currency devalue from, I don't know, 1 peso to $1 to 1 peso to, I think it was about 6 pesos to $1. It lost 80% of its value, people lost all their savings, banks wouldn't lend them any money, people's businesses collapsed, and people went from owning successful, decent businesses to driving taxis and worrying how they're going to feed their family. So it was bleak and people responded with anger. And I think over time there are different groups of artists who felt the city was suffocating under this anger. That everyone was using the walls to vent their frustration, their frustrations, their anger. And every wall had death to these people, lock these people up, down with these people. So groups of artists decided that they were going to do anti-political statements. They were going to paint the most colourful, unthreatening things they possibly could to try and restore the balance a little bit. Zumi belonged to that generation, but she literally took to the streets with the desire to try and make it look a little bit less bleak. If everyone else is writing politics and anger and rage, I'm going to do a giant pink panda. Think of that. So it was almost like, it was kind of provocative in its own way that if you have the idea of a big white wall and you write death to these people, it's a provocative statement that attracts attention to it because the normal setting is white wall and you're putting a statement in the middle of it. If every wall is covered in death to these people, down with these people, vote for these people, and you suddenly arrive and start putting giant colourful animals on it, you're the thing that stands out. You're breaking the harmony of everyone else's frustration and anger. And what happened that was really nice is that people really latched onto this idea. It brought a lot of people out into the streets to paint who had no particular artistic training, but people decided almost in a group aesthetic that they're going to paint simple things. They're going to paint cartoon characters. They're going to try and make it participatory. They would encourage people to come out and paint. So it's almost like this reclaim the streets process that went on. So Zumi belongs to a different generation who was really driven by a desire to put peacefulness and tranquility and positivity and colour back into the streets. So lots of images of nature, germination, lots of seeds and oasis of calm and surreal colours. They always look to me like the jungles in Avatar, but